Temtem has had a bit of an interesting history as far as the broader monster taming genre is concerned. For myself and many others, Temtem, despite not being the first, acted as a major catalyst in introducing a wider audience to Pokemon-like experiences. In this video, we're going to be discussing the rise of Temtem's popularity and where it is at now, and sort of discuss whether or not the game is quote-unquote dead, which is a sentiment that I see expressed quite frequently. I think the whole Temtem situation and how it affected the broader community during a time of massive disarray is extremely fascinating, and I hope you take a seat and enjoy the ride. Okay, so Temtem, despite its early access having launched in January 2020, it was actually initially kickstarted in June of 2018 and over 800% funded in early July, raising roughly $575,000 USD during its run. This alone was an extremely successful feat and was a foreshadow of the indie success that was to come. However, outside of a particular niche, Temtem wasn't really that well known other than those whom were part of its community. I think at this point in time, people were just starting to look for Pokemon alternatives, with some not being particularly happy with the recent release of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, with it being more of a copy-paste than even other third version iterations, I guess, other than Yellow. And frustrations were also starting to brew with the upcoming Let's Go games, which were revealed a month prior to Temtem's Kickstarter launch. At this point in time, though, sure, the Pokemon community was starting to get a little disenfranchised with certain aspects of the games, but what really kickstarted a massive controversy was the Dex Cut that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, which was announced during E3. I don't have to go into this whole drama, I'm sure most of you know about it already, but after the release of Sword and Shield, many people did not see the justification for the Dex Cut, as the game itself was very lacking in content, and only 2 months later, Temtem would release in early access on Steam, which was the perfect time to capitalize on the whole Dexit situation, as people were actively trying to exit Pokemon and were looking for something new. I'm not sure if this early access was planned in order to capitalize this, but whether or not that's the case, Temtem saw a massive amount of sales that they were not ready for. The first few days of launch were filled with large server queues as they worked really hard to further optimize the game and increase the server sizes, and honestly, it's hard to fault them for that when we see AAA studios having messy launches, and I don't think an indie studio was ready for 500,000 sales in the first month alone. All of this attention, however, was a double-edged sword. It came with baggage from the Pokemon situation, and at least from what I've seen, it resulted in two prominent and vocal groups. First, you have the Temtem Sucks crowd. These are the people that are still prevalent to this day, and I see it on my videos where people who usually never comment on anything will just comment on something Temtem related just to say that the devs suck or the game's bad, which is fine. Opinions are opinions and the game isn't perfect, but these are generally non-constructive, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. The second major group are what I'd call Temtem Elitists, whom will defend every decision that's made, basically attacking any valid criticism, and honestly, this can be pretty toxic too. This is by no means the entire community. This is just some loud parts to it. I think most people who played either liked it or didn't like it, sort of gave their constructive feedback and then moved on with their lives, but those aren't the types of people who generally make the loudest sounds or the biggest splashes when it comes to vocalizing praise or dissent. Personally, I'm in the camp where I enjoyed Temtem, but would not call it a perfect game by any means. There are definitely issues that I'd like to see fixed or at least diminished, but that's not what today's about. I did a video a while back talking about my critiques. You can check that out if you want. Linked below. Anyways, I think the whole Anti-Temtem sentiment came from fans who were more defensive of Pokemon and their decision, which ended up initializing Dexit. A lot of people whom were upset with Pokemon left and decided to try Temtem, and thus, at least it seems that a lot of Pokemon fans almost felt like they had to hate Temtem without giving it a proper chance, because to them, it represented the enemy. A lot of Pokemon clone rhetoric that we see within the monster taming genre has been espoused. I mean, it's been like this for a long time. This dates back to the 90s and will likely continue to exist, but it was definitely a lot more vitriolic this time around. Anyways, I know it seems that I'm rambling here, but this is all connected to answering the Temtem is dead question, so just give me a little more time here. So certain content creators perpetuated this anti-Temtem sentiment, which for better or for worse increased the game's sales and popularity more, and likely gave birth to the other group of people that will defend any decision made by Crema or Temtem, and it will be very gatekeepy with what they consider outsiders. I've spoken to other creators who make Temtem content in preparation for this video, and they've definitely noted that a certain subsect of the community is like this, and they're pretty vocal. And I think it's kind of funny because these are the same people who said Pokemon was bad and would call the people who quote unquote shill for the Pokemon franchise shills, and now they're doing the same for Temtem and acting the same way. Two sides of the same coin, if you would. On the other side, the people that say that people detracting against Pokemon are toxic will now detract against Temtem in the same way. And it's just very ironic and, again, quite fascinating if I do say so myself. Anyways, all this controversy with Pokemon mixed in with what would later become controversy with Temtem, I think led to bloated sales numbers. This bloat seemingly came from a wide array of people, including those who wanted to try something new to fulfill the void that they felt Pokemon had left, those who just wanted to try some Pokemon-esque experience, and of course those who bought the game angrily, looking to point out and pick apart any flaws within it to own the Pokemon haters, if you will. What this led to, at least from my perspective, was an abundance of sales from people who probably weren't going to play the game at a hardcore level anyway. Many would go through the game or what was available at the time and beat the currently available content, wait for the next big update, play again, and so on and so forth. So we'd see massive spikes and dips, massive spikes and dips. And this is even the same with Pokemon. A lot of people play competitively, yes, but it's a very small percentage of the overall fan base. So comparing Crema's sales to who's currently online at any given time isn't really indicative of who would be playing for extended period of time, because a lot of people play through the game and then put it down and never play again. Also of note is the fact that most endgame content in the game other than PvP isn't actually available yet, and this fact, coupled with a more casual audience at a game like Pokemon and then subsequently Temtem, explains why players who bought the game initially aren't still playing. Yes, Temtem was marketed as an MMO experience, but right now most major MMO features like the global trading station, the dojo wars, and stuff like that aren't currently in the game. Furthermore, Temtem plays more like a Mon game with MMO elements, as it's very linear and heavily focused on its main storyline, while many popular MMOs that do have long-standing player bases are such that the story is a backdrop. Think about something like RuneScape. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't consider Temtem dead when you take into consideration the fact that the sales were likely inflated from Pokemon fans during its initial launch, the lack of many post-game features due to the early access nature of the game, and just the way the game was built. The MMO features are likely going to only be popular amongst PvP enthusiasts, and like I said, much like Pokemon, it's a comparatively small portion of people that actually want to spend the time it takes to get into the PvP scene. So while sometimes during off periods we only see 600 concurrent players up to 1,000, but then later spikes, it's not a big deal. I don't think this is something to really worry about. The game's still not out on Switch, still not out on Xbox, and a lot of people don't even want to buy a game that is in early access, so there are people who are waiting out even on Steam and PS5. So yeah, that's sort of my whole take on the situation. I don't think Temtem is dead, it's just in between updates. We see slow periods during this time, and then when updates happen, we see high periods. Nothing to be too concerned about in my opinion. There is a discussion to be had about whether or not an MMO should be seeing these types of large variants between spikes, but I want to turn the conversation over to you guys. Do you think Temtem's dead? If you're someone who does partake in PvP, do you have a hard time finding a match? And what are your opinions in general? With all that said, if you are a fan of monster taming games like Temtem or others, definitely subscribe to the channel. I put out new videos every single day. You can check out my Twitter, my Discord, my Patreon, all links below. Special thanks to the patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Steel Case, Dark Persona, and Dro Ghost. And with that, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.